If the only reason you're in business is to make money, you will not make it. You will quit. You've got to have something beyond that. The problem with my business is always the guy in my mirror. That's the bad news. The good news is the solution of my business is always that guy in my mirror. That's very personal. In business debt, no one includes all the math. They leave out a risk factor associated with debt mathematically. You're not going to stay in business. And you think, oh, this is a great way to make some money. You're in it to extract rather than to add value to the world that you live in. You should never put money in something you don't understand. If you're investing, that means you have a long view of money. When you start a business, most people think that the thing you start with is product. And you can, and that's normal. You got to, okay, I got an idea. I want to start a podcast. I got an idea. I want to build a widget. I want to go into this certain kind of a business. I want to be in the heat and air business. I want to be a veterinarian. You got a certain idea. That's product, the service or the actual physical gummy bears that you create, right? But you don't really start there. If you do, you're going to have a problem. But it's okay to have that in mind, because that's usually the thing that gets you out of bed and causes you to go do the business idea. But it really does, before you get to product, it really does backtrack all the way to the top. The first driver is personal. And the personal issue is this. John Maxwell talks about the number 3 law is the law of the lid. I'm the lid on my business. And so that's personal. The growth of my business is dependent upon my personal growth. It will never get bigger if I don't. And so I was 33 when we started this. I'm 64. Obviously, the guy that started this couldn't run this today. That he's not the same guy. I've read a bazillion books over those 30 years. I've had a bazillion experiences. I've had a lot of smart people yell at me and tell me how stupid I am and I need to do this different, and they were right. And they were good enough friends to tell me the truth. And I fixed things, and stuff would break, and we'd do a CSI on it and go, okay, why did the patient die? And, what's the autopsy results? And, well, that's what happened. Or how did crazy get in the building? Put a lock on that door. And so, we go through that stuff, and we get better. So, when you listen to a Sean Ryan podcast interviewing some of the neatest stories in the world, if you're a business leader and you're watching this, mind that podcast for the leadership principles that you're hearing in that, or the life principles that you're hearing in that. If you go to a leadership conference, for God's sakes, take 7,000 notes and be going to a leadership conference. Read a book this year on what you want to get better at, like leadership or business structure, or who's writing in the business space that's smart. Learn from them. And so the problem with my business is always the guy in my mirror. That's the bad news. The good news is the solution of my business is always that guy in my mirror. That's very personal. You can hire a CEO or a president or a COO, but still, if you're the guy, you still got to get better. And one of the ways you can get better is hire people smarter than you. I mean, we've got somewhere around 400 people that do software engineering. I've never written a line of code in my life. I don't even know what they do. But I know that they are creating things that create revenue and help to other people. And that's my job. It's not to learn to be a coder. If the only reason you're in business is to make money, you will not make it. You will quit. You've got to have something beyond that. You and I have both talked off camera that we thoroughly enjoy what we do. And one of the reasons we enjoy it is we're making a difference. You didn't do that for money. You did that because it's really fun, and by God, it was the right thing to do. These are stories people needed to know. It was ridiculous that they weren't told. And Sean freaking Ryan is who told the story. And that's your purpose, right? I mean, and you got to have purpose, and you got to identify it, and then you got to hire people that plug into that purpose. And so you got to have purpose. And the same thing at Ramsey, man. I mean, if we hear somebody met God because they went through one of our things and they got out of debt, and then they heard we were Christians, so they investigated it, that everybody at Ramsey cries. It makes us cry because somebody met Jesus, because that's our purpose. Our purpose is, we teach number one cause of divorce in North America today is money fights and money problems. We can get you on the same budget and get you out of debt and get the stress out of your house. And then you walk in our office and you go, you guys saved our marriage. Yeah, man, game on. We didn't save your marriage. You saved your marriage, but we, by God, showed you how. That's awesome. That's our purpose. And you got to have that, and you got to say it, and you got to look at it, and everybody's got to be plugged into it. And that's a driver of the business. If you think you're in the heat and air business and all you do is make money by going in somebody's house and turning on their thermostat, you're not going to stay in business. And you think, oh, this is a great way to make some money. You're not going to stay in business because you're in it for the wrong reason. You're in it to extract rather than to add value to the world that you live in. And so, yeah, we're going to get to product, and you can start there, but you better go back and take care of you. You better go to purpose, and that'll bring you to people. And you start adding the right ones, the right hiring and firing. Get the right, as my friend Jim Collins says in book Good to Great, get the right people on the bus, the wrong people off the bus, and the right people on the right seats on the bus. And that is like a full-time job. It's like I spend 80% of my calories on that.
Really?
Yeah. It's people, man. They're our greatest blessing and our greatest curse. It's a constant thing. And some of my greatest, most wonderful things are the people that I've gotten to do this journey with that are on my team. And some of the biggest pains and scars I have in my life are from the people that have been on my team. Yeah, your other choice is don't dance. Man, I want to dance. I'm going to get out there. I don't care if I look foolish. Let's have at it. So, yeah, let's do it. People are a constant thing, and they really are a great joy by and large. But you always got that, that one or two story, like we talked about earlier, there's one or two or three that, sheesh, man, I must have been an idiot. I hired them. But worse than that, I kept them. Ugh. And so, yeah, I had one guy tell us in entree, we were standing in the hallway, he goes, yeah, man, my team, he said, they're awful. And I said, well, you suck, don't you? And he said, what do you mean? You hired them, and then you kept them. And then you're sitting here whining about them. Whose fault is this? It's yours. So, yeah, leader has to deal with the people. You don't have a choice. People's the deal. First thing is you should never put money in something you don't understand. Don't put it because Dave Ramsey said do it or anybody else said do it. The second thing is if you're investing, that means you have a long view of money. You're putting it in something, you're going to leave it alone a long time. What happened was we had a product that we called Wealth Coach for a little while. And we ended up doing these very small, but I don't know, we charged more than we ever charged, like $1,000 or something. We always charged $20 to come to this little seminars. And we would end up talking to these people that were millionaires or 5 million and 10 million. And I kept asking them, okay, what do you put money into? What I kept hearing from them was this array of all kinds of different things. So the answer to the question wasn't a certain investment made them rich. What it was they put money in stuff they knew. And I mean, one guy was a car dealer and he had a massive classic car collection, which for an ego-driven person is a horrible idea.
Right.
But because you can lose your butt in any kind of collectible. But for somebody that is in the car business and his grandfather had a dealership and his father had a dealership and he knows that, loves it. He goes out in the garage and pets the cars. I mean, say, guess what? He's making that portfolio seriously gave him a great return. Now, do I recommend to the general public, go get a car? No. No, put money in stuff you understand and you love, and don't put money in stuff because it sounds fancy, it sounds sophisticated. Because there's something that happens when you get money. You think that everybody that has money is sophisticated about their investing. And what I figured out was almost no one is.
Yeah.
They're very primitive. And so I just learned that put money in stuff you love and you understand. Don't put money in stuff because it sounds sophisticated, because you're getting ready to lose your butt, because you're trusting some guy who doesn't have any money who's trying to sell you something. That's where that came from, was just anecdotally hanging out with those folks and researching it. And it gave me peace because I was starting to make bank for the first time. And I'm like, I need to be like doing double backflip limited family partnerships or some kind of crap. Yeah. I don't even know what they are, but I probably ought to be doing one if I'm making this kind of money. And then you talk to a guy and he's like, yeah, you ought to do a double backflip with a twist. And I'm like, yeah, but get right up to it. And I'm going, I don't half understand. No, I think I'd rather just bury it in the backyard than that, because at least I know where it is, Now, that line is actually from Warren Buffett. He in one of his famous annual reports, they're very cheeky and fun to read, and especially the opening paragraphs or so. In one of those, he was talking about in a down year like '08. We soon discover that leverage is not always your friend. That, those of us that can do math realize that any number multiplied by 0 is going to equal 0. And that does that for you. So again, having grown up in the real estate business, one thing you're going to do in the real estate business when I was growing up, if you said, I'm going to be a real estate investor, they took you to the hospital, they took out your risk meter, and they broke it with a hammer, and they put it back in. You're not allowed to perceive risk if you're going to be a real estate guy, because it's glass half full. We're eternal optimists. Everything's going to work out because real estate's always awesome. You can't mess this up. The renters will pay your rent. Oh God, I'll pay your mortgage. How can you mess this up? And so if a little bit of leverage is good, then a lot of leverage is amazing. and that's how I went broke. I leveraged up to my eyeballs had a bunch of short-term notes, and the bank did the unthinkable and called my notes when they got sold to another bank, and they saw a 26-year-old kid owed them $1.2 million on the 90-day notes doing flips. This was before Chip and Joanna told us how to do it, and so do a flip. Oh my God! And we didn't have HG channel to tell us how to fix up a house. Without cable TV, I did this stuff, and so. Yeah, so that's where it came from. And then what happened to me, because I lost everything following the borrow all you can because it works plan, I had to stop and go, I think I've got a bad set of rules. The playbook I've got sucks. I keep losing. And my kids are getting skinny. I mean, this is not working. Right. So when I did that, the first, as you said, the first door I went through was had just become a Christian, and so I started studying the Bible. And so as a matter of faith, I started reading scriptures, and all the scriptures say negative things about debt. It doesn't say it's a sin, it doesn't say you're going to hell, but it's stuff like the borrower's slave to the lender, you're a fool if you cosign. I mean, it says these things in scripture. And then you talk to old rich people, and they go, well, you stay out of debt, boy, and okay, that's kind of God's and grandma's ways of doing it. So what did I miss in academia when I fell in love with leverage from an academic viewpoint? Because it's incongruent to me that if this book of wisdom and these people that are long in the tooth with gray hair that have proof, social proof, they've got money and they kept it, are all saying avoid debt. What is it that we're missing in academic land with my intellect? So spiritual, social proof, now I got to solve it intellectually. And what I ended up doing, I ended up speaking at Vanderbilt to a group of MBAs early in my career, and it forced me to, because I knew I was going to go in there and get tackled, right? Because they're going to go, you're a primitive moron, you believe the Bible, you don't know anything, and you don't know how to do math. And I know how to do math. As a matter of fact, it's about all I know how to do. I'm a math guy. So what I figured out was that in business debt or real estate debt, business is not publicly traded. No one includes all the math. They leave out a risk factor associated with debt mathematically. And so we look at a very inaccurate and primitive measure of leverage. And so if I can borrow this money at 2% and I can invest it at 8%, why am I not making 6%? Well, A, you left out inflation, B, you left out taxes. But aside from that, and that's pretty basic, because this is the argument. It's that the argument is that primitive. Right. But you did not adjust for the risk you took on. Because I think we can all agree, if you have a business that's doing $10 million top line and you've got $12 million in debt, you have a lot more risk than if you had $2 million in debt. And even $2 million is more risk than if you had zero debt. We can agree that debt is equal to risk. And if we can agree to that, then we ought to be able to assign, if we're going to really get down in the analytical jungle, we can assign a mathematical formula to that. Well, ta-da, there is one. It already exists. We just never applied it in that. In the investment world, they teach us to adjust. You don't compare an aggressive growth stock mutual fund that has a high peaks and valleys on the graph, volatile, with a growth and income fund, which has almost no peaks and valleys. So a growth and income fund may have a beta of a 0.8, meaning it is only 80% as risky as the S&P. When you're comparing it to an aggressive growth stock mutual fund that might have a 2.0, meaning it's twice as volatile, risky. And so in that world, we're taught, I mean, one of the first things you learn doing financial analysis in that world is you use the beta as an inverse in the math, and you flip it on its head, and you multiply it through, and you adjust for risk mathematically, so that you can then say, after you adjust for the volatility, the 0.8 versus the 2.0 versus the S&P is a 1.0, it's your baseline. When you adjust for that risk, the perceived return of the aggressive growth stock mutual fund at 20% rate of return, where the other one's making 11.2, it goes away. It neutralizes it. And you might end up with risk adjusted, that 11.2 will come up, and the 20% will come down, risk adjusted, and then you can actually compare apples to apples. But you've risk adjusted for the volatility. And mathematically, we don't do that in business.
Right.
We just go, oh, I want to buy a bulldozer. Let's go get $50,000 at the bank.
Yeah.
And I think I can do it. I think we can push some dirt. And that is your risk analysis. Well, kiss my butt. That is dumb, okay? And people do that all the time. And so you're not trained this way. You're trained that way in only one bucket of finance. All the other buckets of finance, zero real estate people do this. Zero. None. They do not analyze risk. And so if you take risk out, then unlimited leverage is logical. But if you say unlimited leverage, they go, oh, not quite. Maybe 80%, maybe a 70%, maybe a LTV, right? And, but if you push them up to the edge, they can actually feel it a little bit because there's a remnant of a risk meter in there, but it just doesn't function anymore. That's where that came from.